Bending Toward the Sun by Leslie Gilbert-Lurie. This is an amazing memoir told by the daughter of Rita Lurie, who was 5 years old when she left her home in Poland to hide in a small, dark attic with 14 members of her family from the summers of 1942 to 1944. Sound familiar? And so, and it was, you know, I don't have to go into the detail of what that had to have been like for her. But decades later, Rita became this very loving, successful mother. But what lurked beneath these unbreakable bonds of her close-knit family was this legacy of fear and guilt and distress that had a tremendous impact on her eldest daughter, Leslie. And so Leslie, who was extremely accomplished, she's a lawyer, a media executive, she began developing fears and anxieties that were eerily similar to her mother's. And so this book is really a collaboration. A decade long, it took them a decade to write this book, and it really reveals how the Holocaust still lives in the hearts and the minds of the survivors, and even extends to the people beyond the immediate. And it's really it's three generations. How they talk about how it affects not only Rita, who was the woman who was directly, you know, affected by it, but her daughter and her daughter's daughter. And so I think it's completely powerful. There's a line here that I thought sort of wrapped it up way better than I ever could, that this sheds light on the generational reach of any trauma beyond the initial victim, and drawing on her interviews with the other survivors and with the Polish family who hid 5-year-old Rita. This book brings together stories of the three generations of women, mother, daughter, granddaughter, and to understand the legacy that unites, inspires, and haunts them all. Under This Unbroken Sky by Shandi Mitchell. Shandi Mitchell is a filmmaker, and she came into the office one day and blew us away with this book. Do you remember how we all went a little crazy with Edgar Sawtelle, and everybody said, who is that, what is that? I think this is my Edgar Sawtelle. I think this is. Oh, I'm on video. All right, I didn't say it, I did say it, I didn't say it. Okay. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, it's really quite beautiful. This is a story about Ukrainian immigrant in 1937, and he has been sent to jail for stealing bread to try and feed his family. And when he returns to this struggling family after being in prison for a year, his wife and children are living under the care of his sister, under this very harsh conditions. And so he's the survivor of the labor camp and Stalin's crimes in Ukraine, and he is just determined to get his life back together with his family. And because the author is a filmmaker, I think that she just brings something extraordinary to the table. I think that she just paints such convincing landscape and just gets it completely. And so anyway, what happens is so he comes back, and they're sort of getting along as best they can, but his sister's husband comes back onto the scene, and the guy's kind of a brute. And family peace is disrupted by this man who's been unable to find a backer for this get-rich-quick scheme that involves buying land, and so tensions arise, and he treats his brother-in-law with such disdain that the family starts to unfold, and it's all against the backdrop of this terrible time of struggle and immigration. And I just think that I think you should keep your eyes open for this book. We've been talking about it for a while now, and we're very excited to have this book on the list.
Evidence of Murder by Lisa Black. Anyone into the CSI forensics type of stories? Love that stuff. I absolutely love it. If you love that, you'll definitely love this book. You may know her. This is actually the second book or second novel in a series. The first book that came out last year was called Takeover. What I appreciate about her is that she really does use her own experience and from her work world to really paint a picture with a story. For those that may or may not know, she is a latent fingerprint examiner, and she was the former forensic scientist for the Cleveland Coroner's Office. She's also a member of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and she testified in over 40 homicide trials. In this particular book, we revisit Teresa McClain, who is the main character, and she's also a forensic investigator as well. And she is pretty much still brokenhearted over the loss of her fiance that was killed in a bank robbery. And so she happens upon a new case, which she hopes will sort of take her out of that funk she's in. And she ends up investigating a story of a woman who's a wife and a mother who was found dead in the forest, and it appeared that she had froze to death. And there are no clues, and it just seems as though she just walked into the forest and decided to freeze. Not that I would do that, but, you know. Anyway, so so that's the situation. Her husband, obviously, is a suspect. Also entered into the scene a former boyfriend who is now claiming paternity of her child. And once again, there are no clues. And so Teresa is desperately trying to find out what happened to this woman, more so for the sake of the child, because the child is really caught in the middle of all of this and sort of is in the middle of this tragedy. So it's really amazing, like I said, how she really paints a picture, uses her own experience to draw from, to really make it exciting, riveting, and real. So this book will be out in September, Evidence of Murder.
All right, How to Paint a Dead Man by Sarah Hall. When I first started at Harper, one of the first books I read was a galley of Sarah Hall's last book, which was Daughters of the North, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite books that we've ever published, and all because of her writing. She's literary without being stuffy. She's poetic without being maudlin. Her style's fluid, lucid, gorgeous, and she's been compared to writers such as D.H. Lawrence, James Joyce, Thomas Hardy. So her latest is How to Paint a Dead Man, which is her most ambitious work yet. And she weaves together multiple lives and stories through the prism of a still life painting. It's something that's never been done before, I think it's safe to say. It goes from 1960s Italy to present-day London, and it's a fierce study of art and its place in our lives, as well as a riveting novel. It will definitely keep you turning your pages. The New Review recently called it an amazing feat of literary engineering, and it truly is. So that's How to Paint a Dead Man, out in September. Next is I Shudder by Paul Rudnick. I have a pretty long commute in the morning, and reading I Shudder has kept me entertained and sane. It's a collection of comedic essays, and the humor is just my style. It's random, shockingly hilarious, and the comedic twists in each essay come completely without warning. They'll have you laughing out loud even at very opportune times, like when people are sleeping in the morning on the train, and all of a sudden you start cracking up in your seat. His background is as a screenwriter. He wrote Sister Act and In and Out, among other scripts. And he has dirt on some really big Hollywood players, including producer Scott Rudin. He is the producer of No Country for Old Men, Doubt, Revolutionary Road, and he's a pretty interesting character. So Paul Rudnick is also a true New Yorker, and his book includes fabulous stories about his favorite haunts, including the West Village and the old Chelsea Hotel. We have a great quote from Dave Sedaris, which I think says it all. He says, Paul Rudnick is a champion of truth and love and great wicked humor, whom we ignore at our peril. There's no book wiser or half as funny as I Shudder.